money without fitting into the criteria of the pay grid. And if you have union members, then hiring and firing is well, firing certainly is a procedure set up within the contracts. For non-contract people, the board has, I believe, the ultimate responsibility for hiring and firing. Would you agree with that?
The elected board has the authority to hire and fire.
To hire and fire.
Yes.
And they all negotiate their own CBAs, collective bargaining agreements?
The town administrator works on the contracts.
She
Is the representative of the town on the contracts.
and with Kelly has done the negotiations.
Negotiations.
Yes.
She doesn't
The Board of
approve them,
Selectmen-
obviously.
The Board of Selectmen provides the oversight
Yeah.
and the guidance as to what we would accept, but the negotiations are done by the town administrator.
Town administrator,
And the final approvals are absolutely the Board of
Board of
Selectmen's
Selectmen.
authority and responsibility.
This may be too simplistic, but the Board of Selectmen, in my opinion, from my view, the Board of Selectmen has the final authority, and they've delegated some authority to Kelly and some steps along the process to getting to that final decision to Kelly.
I don't know if it's a formal delegation, I don't know if there's like a vote where they say the selectmen delegate, but the board of selectmen probably says, this is what we'd like to see in a contract, and then Kelly goes and talks to the union.
Yeah, well, obviously, if it's a contract, if they were gonna vote, it'd have to be behind closed doors anyways, you can't, that's not a public meeting thing.
Does the board, I mean,
The strategy is done behind closed doors, but the acceptance of the contract.
the ultimate
Oh, yeah,
CBA is
but you don't
public,
do your
But if
negotiation
in
in
fact we
public
feel
meeting.
that the strat, by negotiating, by discussing, deliberating the strategy would be a detriment to our bargaining position,
Negotiation.
then we do it in executive session. It's almost, I've never heard of not being.
Not be, yes.
But theoretically, you could say, no, we can discuss this in open session,
Yeah,
but then it's like you're letting them know how you're bargaining. so to
Yeah.
speak.
No one
That's
does
right.
it in open session, but the point I was trying to, or what I was trying to get at was, is there a formal delegation? Is there a vote? So I don't think the selectmen formally voted to delegate that responsibility, is my guess. My guess would be that they set a direction, it's like, this is what the parameters of the contract we want to see, and Kelly goes and negotiates.
But she comes back
And
to the board
there's a
as
constant
the
discussion.
negotiations
Yeah,
go on, to
the
say, this
interim
is where I am,
steps.
is this okay, but I, then, yeah, right.
Right,
That whole
but she
thing,
doesn't have formal authority to do it now, and where I'm going with that is, if she has formal authority to do it now, is there something we might want to codify in a charter or an act, if that's the route we wanted to take? So like if she's already doing that, do we want to make that formal? That's all I was.
the Board of Selectmen could decide to, a different Board of Selectmen could decide to say,
We'll do it.
we'll do it, or one of the board will work with the town administrator or
Right.
something like that. As a matter of fact, that's the way it was under Jenna. The 8 selectmen typically worked with Jenna on everything except the school teacher contract, because there's only one from the town, so Jenna did that.
Right. The current practice is town administrator negotiates CBAs with oversight by the board and final authority vested with the board.
True.
All right, I'm sorry to digress there. I think we're still on 21. Actually, I think we're wrapping up 21.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any comments for that before we go on to 22? How do you think any organizational inefficiencies might be addressed structurally to improve your operations? Majority responded to not pinpoint any organizational inefficiencies that might be addressed. So some people were silent, some people said none, and some, like the elementary school commission committee said regionalization, took that as not being I took that as really not responsive. Increasing the term for the moderator, I mean, that's a general law that we could have revised by a special act, if that's what we wanted to do, I don't know if we would consider that. Council on Aging Director, report directly to town administrator, we've seen that before, and then additional personnel. So the 5 green ones were additional personnel, basically. Again, I didn't see that as structural, so that's how I addressed that. IT tech worker to me is not structural.
No. I don't think any of them are structural. I guess my only thing I would say is it worthy to name them in the summary or not? I'm just raising the question. I don't have any strong
Well,
feeling
so-
over the other.
Name who we hire.
Name what were the additional hires that were suggested? You know, like,
Money manager, planner,
Yeah, yeah.
IT.
yeah, I
So,
don't,
so Lou, I think that your first sentence or majority, 11 of 20, I think that number is actually quite a bit higher than that. If you include people who said, oh, let's hire more people. Because if that's not
I see what you're saying,
that's not a structural improvement.
I see what you're saying. So
mm,
it depends on how we categorize those personnel ones. So, no, I get what you're saying, so it'd be 17 of 20, or whatever it is, 16 of 20.
Yeah, I think that might be more, because when I saw 11, 20, it's like, wow, did 9 respondents actually suggest structural improvements? No.
yeah. We've sort of defined what organizational versus operational is.
Yeah.
But are other people aware of that or gonna view it that way?
We're gonna need to put that in the summary, I don't know if we're
Yeah.
gonna here. GRC construes personnel as not being structured, so that's just a note. So examples of structural change in my mind would be consolidating boards,
Yeah.
changing who reports to who,
Who,
appoint to,
Yeah, yeah.
oversight responsibilities, powers to take certain actions, that to me is structural.
So then did you count the Council on Aging reporting directly to the town administrator as structural? Because that would be
I did,
organizational.
I did, and I think,
Oh, you think, I didn't go by your color coding, no.
I didn't color code necessarily everything, that was just how I took notes. Other responses made specific suggestions for the town to consider regionalization and then having the Council on Aging report directly to the town administrator. So that could be clearer, but that part of that sentence was intended for a structural change. For the town to consider structural changes, I think that's, I just need to refine that.
Yeah.
You raised a good point earlier, so Phil Knowles is the chair of the Board of Road Commissioners and the Board of Water Commissioners. Do we need to address that somehow? That, the greater weight is given to one person's responses.
Well, it's kind of dependent on whether we say these are respondents or if these are boards.
Well, I don't think it's fair to say boards, because I don't think in all cases that they coordinated with their boards.
Yeah, well, then we shouldn't say boards
You
anyway.
could say chairs, or respondents, or chairpersons. I don't know if we can
Yeah,
break down which board chairs conferred with their boards or not.
I think that, there wasn't a lot, it was minimal, so I would think you would, if you wanna, yeah, maybe chairs.
Accurately, right, chairs. That's
Yeah.
fine. That works.
But I think maybe more weight is given to Phil, because he's on two boards, but to fairly represent the opinion of the person in that position, you need to count him twice.
Although in my quick skim right now, I don't see any differences between his answers for the water versus his answers for the road.
Yeah.
I was on the,
Yeah,
It's
no,
not-
no,
It's the same,
there were a
literally-
couple minor
Are there?
differences at the beginning, but for the most part, you know, when I talked to him.
Yeah.
So when I talked to him, it wasn't like he was gonna change his answer. Like, there was differences for question number,
or something.
with regard to the appointment powers. I mean, one was
Well, they-
water commissioner, one was.
well, yeah, but they still
Right,
appoint
they
two
still appointed them.
superintendent.
But like, there was one, there was an A and a B that were slightly different, I can't remember the number, but for the most part, they were consistent, because that's how we felt this board operated. And both are independently elected boards. So, any other thoughts on 22? Wording, calling out the exceptions. I did not spell out the cultural council's comment, which basically said lack of visibility creates inefficiencies. The meeting of the chairs of all committees and board can lead to better working relationships. I mean, I could suppose, consider putting that in if you think it's important. I don't think that there would be monthly meetings of all chairs.
Yeah, no,
I just-
if they have a hard enough, that would increase that to
Yeah.
36.
I just don't know that that's
36 meetings for some people.
feasible at all, so, or necessary, so I, you know, on second thought, I don't think I add anything.
Well, she didn't actually say monthly. I think from my conversation with her about that, and maybe we don't even need to go into this, but it was like that when a new fiscal year starts, they bring together the chairs of all the boards and committees, so they at least know who each other are, you know? And maybe they go around the room and say, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do. That was her, that was the gist of what she thought was,
Rather than anonymity, it's, everyone knows who each other is.
well, at least I've seen them once.
Yeah. Right. 23. I think the first sentence summarizes it. I highlighted the second sentence because it was I think I want to make sure that we're all on board together with what we think the meaning is of a lot of the lack of suggestions. It's contextually, we've talked about in the past, that we think that people are generally satisfied with town, the effectiveness and efficiency of town services. And that's why I highlighted that, because that's a judgment or determination that we need to make together. We'll make sure you're comfortable with that.
I think that's fair because I think we all generally say the boards thought they were all doing a good job. But I don't think anyone looked outside their silos particularly.
I agree with your sense.
I mean, I could say delivery of services within their areas of responsibility, if you prefer that.
I,
You already say their delivery of services or something.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
it's there,
fine.
yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that before we go into 24? Which actually, we already did 24,
We did 24.
so 25. What advantages and what, excuse me, what disadvantages do you anticipate for our town government would it be a more centralized or less centralized form of government generally? So I broke this down into 3 categories of more centralization, less centralization, and relatively neutral. I think that's what the actual color coding stands for in this.
So it's 9, 4, and 7?
Yeah, so it's very mixed, which I was surprised.
Very
I think
nice.
I was most surprised by this set of responses. Because when we had talked about this in the past, I expected this to be less, people were not in favor of centralization, neutral or less centralization. And 9 of 20 is almost, it's practically half, so.
Mhm.
And so, because of that, I'd like to get your input.
Although,
on that.
to be fair, just because more centralization is not like, I mean, like Noel's comment is really contained in a way, you know?
So, I think I'd like your input just to make sure that I've interpreted these, lump these into the right categories. Because I think 25 and 26 are really.
The meat of the whole thing.
Yes. Yes, so, you know, neutral, I think the first one is clearly neutral, the
Yeah.
second one is clearly less centralized. The Board of Health really gave its view on advantages and disadvantages, so I lumped that in as neutral. Board of Library Trustees, so I feel that town government now is decentralized, so I put that as decentralized, or not in favor of more centralization, I should say. Same thing for the Park and Cemetery. Now, like you said, the road commissioners and water commissioners, that was more limited in scope for centralization, but I still thought it skewed that way a little bit, so
Yeah.
I lumped it in with that. The Commissioner Trust Fund signatures, humorous.
That's good.
Yeah. So I lumped that in as less centralized. Elementary school committee, I know that was Libby's interview. I took that as being pro-centralization, not
Mhm.
neutral.
Yes, that's my
Mhm.
recollection of
Yeah.
her comments.
Yeah, no, that's,
Yeah,
I mean, that summarizes it, so I was again surprised by that tally. And so I ask if you read the last paragraph of that summary and see if that's the general consensus of the GRC. So it's that last piece. So I mean, it's basically 9 to 7 with, you know, 4 neutral.
Mhm.
So it appears to me to be just about dead even, so what do we do with that? Does that mean we start a dialogue, does the people, the 9 people who favor centralization versus 7 who don't? I mean, that's,
It's not unreasonable to think that a lot of people answered this from the lens of their own board.
Mhm.
And so
From their
some,
silos.
from their silos. So when Liz Mulholland says, I don't want more centralization, I'm not sure she's thinking about a DPW, right? She's probably thinking about, don't make the historic commission
Report to someone.
report to
or-
somebody else, that, you know, so, you talk about, you used, you know, particularized rates, or talk, I don't think that the 7 people who oppose centralization would necessarily object to targeted discussions about
as long
areas of,
as long as it didn't target their
as long
board.
as it's trying to again, exactly.
Mhm.
I don't see Liz objecting to a DPW, do you?
No, and she probably doesn't care who reports to the town administrator, as long as she
It's not
has,
hers.
as long as she has, the control of her own
Right.
field where she feels she's an expert,
I agree.
yeah. I think,
No, but the trust fund would think the same, Dave Stratton, whatever.
yeah,
Trust fund.
leave me alone, do whatever else you
Leave me
want.
alone, you wanna fool around with parks or DPW, go ahead.
Well, yeah,
So I think you're right about what you say, just, you
Mhm.
know, I'm not too concerned about the people who want less centralization.
So,
I'm not concerned about, I don't expect they would object to
somebody else.
exploring
Exploring, yes,
opportunities.
So-
yes.
so-
Select opportunities.
is that piece of the summary, especially the second sentence, appropriate for this summary? Or is that more to be in the main part of the high-level recommendations report at the beginning, the executive summary? Or it could be both, but I'm just saying.
Yeah,
is it
I think
appropriate here?
it belongs in the beginning, because basically ultimately that's the question this whole thing was asking, isn't it? More or less, and so it should be in the beginning, but it should be called out here, because this is where you have the facts, figures, numbers to support it. And I think those that are neutral, I think when you're neutral in something like this, you're actually more for it than against it. Because if you're against something, you come out and say, you don't say, oh, I'm neutral, I don't care. If you don't care,
Yeah, but, I mean, in theory, you could add their numbers to both. So if we were to get rid of the neutral views, we can add 4, so 13 out of 20 generally, I don't know how else to break it down.
No, I think the breakdown is fine, but I agree that your last sentence maybe becomes one of them. Move it up to make it a headline.
yeah,
Mhm.
but leave it here too,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's it, because I needed to really hone in on 26.
So can we, at the risk of elongating the meeting for another 3 minutes, so really, can we go back to mine and just look at my
Sure.
bullets?
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't want to get into the substance of the bullets, but rather ask whether, I put them down as examples that I'm hoping you will also contribute some ideas for the report, right? Because we talked about the specific questions, but before we get to specific questions, don't we want to have some executive summary headlines?
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily get into each one of these and say whether it's right or wrong.
So I think it's important to highlight, close to the beginning, this is a snapshot in time
Yes.
of the 2009, fiscal year 2019 chairs.
Snapshot in time. Good.
In fact, your very first sentence is perfect, and maybe snapshot comes second or third after that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we want to state what we did, what you've done, so we interviewed the 20 boards, 20 chairs. And then your second bullet is I think accurate and.
generally satisfied in everything.
Yeah,
But my question is, or my suggestion is that both of you also come up with just some high-level
Mhm.
statements that could go into
The summary.
the executive summary,
Mhm.
that are not,
Factual
not-
statements that are not,
question specific.
well, you're not, because we haven't voted on or really discussed in depth what we think this all means yet, right? So are you suggesting that what our opinions are for this now?
Not sure.
I mean, I know, so was your second bullet. I mean, that's, I think the consensus is that's our
That's our
opinion.
That's our
finding.
it's a finding, right, it's an interpretation, it's, you know, it's.
Doesn't it need to be tempered with the other thing that comes from your high-level summary of the last question that says, while there's no pent-up demand, there's no true objection to entertaining
Gives an indication we
something.
should have a dialogue
Yes,
about.
Right,
yes,
right, right,
yes.
right,
Those two
right, right.
should kind of go hand in
Yes,
hand.
that's
yeah.
fair, that's fair. Well, there's no demand for change, there's no objection to investigation or.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So-
Well, I don't know
so-
about that next one, we haven't really,
I've looked at the materials of the Mass Municipal Association.
You shared many with us.
Yeah, but, I mean, all that's gonna do is really give to the board what the different forms are. And maybe I'll do that just in case they're not aware of different forms, so they can have that summary. It might even be something I can append as an attach to the appendix. Say, these are the different forms of government that the selectmen like to
Yeah.
consider. But I also wanna say something along the lines of, we do not recommend switching from an open town meeting form of
Right.
government. You know, we don't foresee any, people are generally satisfied with having a five-member board of selectmen, things like that, that reinforce our current structure that, I don't think we have any intent of recommending changes to.
mhm.
And also that will hopefully allay any fears that we're gonna make some big recommendations for something completely foreign.
Okay, I only want you to look at this again to just encourage
Add some
both of
bullets.
you to do something comparable, because when we meet next week, of course, we'll have our edited versions of what we did today, but I think it would be good to then talk some about these.
Yes.
In a more
high-level
general way.
points.
So, are we done with that little part? Okay. What are we calling our interviewees? So just so we're so consistent, are we calling them
Chairs?
the chairs?
What do you think? I mean, respondent's probably too formal for
Well, I think
people, so.
respondents doesn't give them their credit due, you know?
Yeah, so chairs or chairpersons, it should be gender neutral, I think, and just, I don't care, I don't have a preference.
What do you-
Chairs is
I
shorter.
think it's fine with me.
Chairs?
Chairs,
Yeah.
chairs. Chairs of
Our
boards and
chairs,
committees.
yeah. And then, I would just say use boards consistently.
Boards, why don't we just use boards? Do you think we have to, at some point, define that by boards we mean?
Yes,
Or
yeah,
chairs.
so my first bullet is going to say something like the GRC interviewed 20 chairs of boards.
Parentheses, boards.
More explicitly, this
Yeah.
includes committees on it, right?
Yes.
But, yeah, we'll just call them boards and chairs. Okay.
So GRC discussed the possibility of a new town department, e.g. a DPW. That, to me, means maybe we should discuss the history that, back in 2005, that was previously considered. we might mention some history here to give people context. Give the board of selectmen and people reading the report, maybe there's already an MMA summary of exactly what that is.
But the second sentence is, motion, the GRC did not explore this in depth,
No.
right?
No, I mean,
We heard it, but
well,
we
I
didn't
mean,
really.
we heard
spend
it,
the time on
there wasn't a ton of time spent on it, but we also haven't really ruled it out either.
Correct.
I mean, so,
Absolutely.
do
Right, which is
we
why.
want to explore it? Do we
Well,
want
that's
to
why,
say this?
that's why I have the intended bullet, which is, we might want to consider this sooner rather than later. Time is right.
So I think it would be helpful for, to put like, strength, the weight of, how many people were proposing or suggesting a DPW. You know, some, the only, it seems to be the only one consistent way or suggestion that people said we should consider. I can't think of, other than personnel things, that's the only really structural, that and the COA director reporting to the town administrator, only two structural changes that were consistently mentioned, I think. And I don't even know how consistent it was, I'm not saying that there should be a lot of weight, but it's at least something that,
Well, COA director reporting to the town administrator was only proposed by the COA
yeah,
board.
that's true.
But others wouldn't know
Nobody else.
but nobody else would know to recommend that.
Nobody would object.
Nobody would object. That's interesting, but does not anticipate significant
Yeah, I was
changes
just
to
reading
these
that.
headlines.
I don't know that we can say that,
No.
because it's all,
I think if,
And by,
yeah,
again,
yeah.
put it down there as a,
Yeah.
no, this is all just
as a
discussion.
No,
this is
no.
fine.
suggestion, just.
I'm not so sure that there isn't pent-up opinions by the employees, whether we ask them or don't ask them.
Or new chairs, or other towns.
Yeah, well, see, now that you get into a different fiscal year, it could be a new
Right,
chair, they
right,
might have a
so-
very different way of running their board.
I think it's, the GRC could learn more by doing more research and doing more interviews, but. constrained
Just
by-
period.
Constrained by, yeah, constrained by life, as in I want to have one. All right.
See if
That's
there's
it,
any
does
comments
anyone
on
have
it.
any?
Any, see if there's any comments at the end.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't have any correspondence and materials. Upcoming meetings, we'll meet next week at 7 PM.
Yes.
Mhm.
And before I ask the end of the table, do you guys have any other comments?
No.
Oh, us,
Yeah.
no, I think we did good work.
Anything?
Yeah, I have a number. I'll make them very quick though. John's handout, you were just talking about consolidating departments. I'm mumbling my words at this hour, sorry. Given imminent departures due to retirement, there's multiple coming up. I think you might want to make this broader base. Right at the beginning of the committee discussion, you talked about maybe consolidating a financial department. This just talks about the DPW.
Well,
But Barbara's gonna retire as well.
Yeah.
This is just a summary, I think, of what our chair said. This isn't what
Oh, okay.
necessarily what we've considered, talked about.
Yeah, okay.
This,
Well,
I think, that's my opinion, they were trying
That's
to
fine.
put this together. When we get to the high-level summary, we could say something about having discussed a financial department.
Yeah, you brought that up.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. John, on number 16 and 17, the elementary school brought up long-term planning. I think that's very important to leave in there, because the town has a long-term 5-year plan. We're just beginning to utilize it and incorporate it, part of the budgeting. We really haven't yet. It was part of the Collins Center, but that really needs to
Are
be.
you talking about the financial guidelines that were just approved?
No. There's a 5-year plan and there's a capital plan as well.
But that's,
There was three separate documents, Lou.
Right, but was that voted on? I mean, it was just a report that was submitted to us, there was no action.
Kelly has updated it. It was populated first by the Collins Center.
Mhm.
It was updated by Kelly. I don't know if the Board of Selectmen voted it, but it's, it's best practices to have a 5-year plan. So my point, John, leave it in there. I think it's good to highlight it. I'm surprised, a little disappointed nobody else brought it up. Going back to yours here, there was an awful lot of discussion on number 24.
Oh, yes, 24.
I have just a couple of questions and thoughts that may help summarize it. Just a statement. Most boards were comfortable with their own board being appointed or elected. I'm guessing that's the case. So they were comfortable with the way they were appointed or elected. A question, did anyone recommend changes to elected or appointed for their board? Was anyone?
I don't think we
Think so.
asked that question.
Well, no, we didn't, but nobody said that board should be elected, that board should be appointed.
Right.
We didn't get that in depth.
No.
I don't remember hearing anybody,
Say, my board should be elected.
I don't remember
No,
anybody
There's
saying.
no
no one
segue into
said
that at all.
Right.
No, I'm happy with my board the way it is.
Yes, the
We do
general
a good
consensus,
job.
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I thought. So those two. One little formatting suggestion on question 7. It was a very nice chart, but the last column was almost a duplicate. How often do you meet?
Yeah,
You could put 2 X's on there. And my only thought maybe to differentiate that last column on the right would be to make a double vertical line or something, just to show that. I guess when I first looked at it, I saw the boys could put 2 X's on. It confused me a little bit. They were almost 2 different questions.
well, they are 2 different questions.
To separate it,
Yeah.
if this vertical line was double or bolded, just to make this
Oh,
last
you,
column.
oh, you're not talking about splitting the column, you're talking about putting another line in there.
Right,
So
right, just to show that,
Yeah.
that column on the right is different.
It is, I don't think it's more frequently, that should probably just be as necessary. Right? I mean, really,
No, it was,
No, it's.
they've met 2 times a year, but we'll meet more frequently
Or
if
they
we
meet
need
monthly.
to.
Oh, we meet
More frequently, or we
Right,
meet
right,
25
right.
times a year and we'll
Yeah.
meet more
I know,
frequently.
I know what you're saying.
Sorry for the
It's
mumbling.
a formatting, no,
No,
On number 4, it was excellent, with the little box, the summary box.
Yeah.
As an engineer, I look at numbers, so that's where I looked,
I, oh.
rather than reading it. And I know other people prefer to read text.
Yeah, and that's part of it, you know.
But if you look at number 4, perfect summary. That was it.
Yep.
I thought that was, number 4 was the.
End on a high note.
all right,
In the case of appointed committees, there's just one reference there. I'll go back to town bylaw. There's a shade tree committee and there's a tree planting committee. The tree planning committee
Planning.
is appointed by the Conservation Commission. The shade tree
That's interesting.
committee
They never
is
told us
appointed
that.
by
Okay.
the moderator.
Okay, so where's my,
I think you had the planning was by the moderator, it's the shade tree.
so shade tree committee,
The shade tree, and you can look it up in the bylaw at any time under administration, it's there.
but there's a difference, a shade tree to me is like one and
Okay.
a way, and a.
tree planning committees, that's what he said he
Yeah, I
did.
think then he's wrong according to the bylaw, but
It's the tree,
the shade tree committee is the one that the moderator is responsible for.
shade tree,
Shade tree.
SHADE.
Tree planning's constant.
Just because you